not having the shot clock is definitely why when you compare that team to, let's say, the 12 or 08 team, it's a very different. But I mean, I still think they were a really good defensive team. And I'm still kind of shocked that they lost 8 games.
It's just, and also you look at, Al Wood was their leading scorer. You lose him, you lose your top scorer from the year before, and you come back to win the national championship. Shows you the kind of coach Dean Smith was, the kind of program Carolina was at that point where you could lose your best player statistically and be better the next year for it.
I mean, look at this. Al Wood in that season, 6.3 rebounds per game. Sam Perkins, 7.8 rebounds per game. And James Worthy, 8.4. So you had 3 guys that were just cleaning glass all day. I mean, that is crazy. So that team had to be included on there. And that's one we'll probably talk about here in a little bit. 83-84, as you mentioned, 28-3, 14-0, first in the ACC. Lost in, you're right, the Sweet 16. I did misread that because I went through College Basketball Reference, and they listed like regional semifinals. So I'm slow, didn't quite do the math, tournament math right in my head. So, that was a Sweet 16 loss. Of course, Mike led the team in scoring, 19.6. Sam Perkins, a senior. Brad Daugherty, who was on that roster, as well as our boy, Coach Matt Daugherty, who was on that roster as well. Those were their best players. And remember, we talked to Coach Daugherty. This was one of the teams that he brought up to us that he thought should have won a national championship. Because you want to talk about impressive stats. They averaged 80.1 points per game and allowed 64.8. And again, okay, you could say the shot clock. That is almost a 16-point difference. That's about 15.3. That is ridiculous.
That was legitimately Dean Smith's first team that dominated the opponent.
Right.
Night in, night out.
Right. So then I got 86-87. 32-4, 14-0, first in the ACC, lost in the Elite Eight to Syracuse. Everybody knows this team. Kenny Smith's senior team. You had J.R. Reed, who was on that roster. But really, outside of that, they weren't uberly talented as, some of these other rosters. I mean, Jeff Lebo, was on that roster. I mean, here's the thing, though. They did have 4 guys that averaged over 13 a game. So they could score the ball. I mean, they averaged 91.3 a game. I mean, Kenny was that was the first time where you had a point guard that was literally looking to run you out of the gym every time he stepped on the floor. To me, that's the one that I don't know if it was best team not to win a title. We'll have to kind of debate that. I think it's the most disappointing tournament result because of just how dominant they were, and they lose in the Elite Eight to Syracuse. I mean, is that kind of where you're at with that team? I mean, it's close.
There's an argument because, I have my team that I think is I'm going to pick for this topic. I think you put Syracuse in the ACC, Carolina doesn't lose that game.
Right.
You got to think scouting and film back then wasn't as prevalent as it is today. And we grew up learning how great Jim Boeheim's 2-3 zone is.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good example of it.
Right.
Carolina didn't see that.
Exactly.
To that kind of level. And as good as Jim Boeheim can coach zone, he's the best coach to ever coach that form of defense in the history of the game.
Yes, there is no argument against that. If you say Mike Hopkins, I will slap you.
So, I mean, there's definitely an argument for that. I think if you run it back or you put Syracuse in the ACC, Carolina doesn't lose that game.
Okay. So I go almost a decade. I did not go with the 97-98 team on there. I decided to go with Dean Smith's final team, the 96-97 team. 28-7, 11-5, which again, I mean, I'm going to read you the names that were on this roster, and you try to figure out how this happened. Lost in the Final Four to Arizona. Antoine Jameson was their leading scorer. He almost averaged a double-double that season. Shammond Williams, a junior. Vince Carter, a sophomore. Serge Zwicker was a senior. And Ed Cota on that roster as well. Now, Serge Zwicker, you might be saying, okay, why is he on this list? He averaged 11.5 points per game, 8.1 rebounds on the inside. Serge was a legit player.
Also, the only white guy that can pull off the headband.
Serge,
outside of Mike Bibby.
Those might be my favorite. Mike Bibby is mixed, though, right?
I don't know what he is, but
we're not having this conversation on the podcast. Wait, did Mike Bibby beat that team? Was this headband against headband? I don't remember when Bibby's career spanned. I think it was. I think it was headband versus headband in this one.
I'm glad that's what we're calling
this is okay. We figured it out, folks. Greatest game in Tar Heel tournament history. Headband Serge Zwicker versus headband Mike Bibby. Legendary.
How's the greatest game a loss, though?
I know. I'm just kidding. Not even close. We're just messing around. But like he was a legitimate player. But look at all those other guys that were on there. Now I know Ed Cota was a freshman, and again, freshmen at that time were kind of seen differently. You had to be a really special talent to come in and immediately impact. But I mean, he still averaged 8 points a game, 2.7 rebounds per game, and more importantly, 6.9 assists per game. Ed Cota, easily the biggest competitor to Kendall Marshall, if you want to have that argument for best distributor of the basketball in Carolina history.
I think this is a team that when we look at kind of gets a pass that didn't win a national title. A lot of it's because you got youth at the point guard.
They were not good from the field. They shot 47.9%, which is a very low number for a team on this list.
I guess the way I'll put this, lucky Rasheed Wallace wasn't on that team. Because if you add Sheed to the fold of that team and you don't win a title, when you look at the kind of NBA careers Antoine and Vince Carter had,
right,
there's no excuse.
With the fact that this was Dean Smith's last team, which you would imagine Dean had told them, I'm leaving after the season's over.
No, they didn't know.
No. Okay.
They didn't know. Nobody knew until he retired.
But I mean, the talent on this roster,
which we look at
sheerly excellent.
11-5, and that was best for third. But at this time, you got to think Coach K's back from his mysterious back injury.
Yeah, they're now turning into that power that they're going to be in the early 2000s.
Clemson was really good then.
Right.
Rick Barnes had got it going down there at Clemson.
Maryland under Gary Williams.
Maryland was good. Georgia Tech was still good under Bobby Crimmins.
That's
Wake Forest. Tim Duncan's there right now. So
Timmy, is it bad that he's one of those guys in ACC history? I guess since I didn't see him play, I just really don't hate.
Oh, you can't.
I mean, he's such a good player. But yeah, no, you're right. The ACC at that time was. You want to talk about just brutal schedules. I can only imagine. So, okay. So then we go a little more than a decade. I'm going to go to 07, 08. Like I mentioned, bastard refs. I'm saying that on this podcast. Sorry, man. They screwed us in that game. Came all the way back against Kansas, and the refs screwed us. That is the one game in Carolina history, and there's a game, I think it was back in 16 against Virginia, that they screwed us. Those are the only two games in Carolina history that I will say the refs blew the game on us. Only ones. And if anybody has a problem with it, don't really care. That team was loaded. Now, here's the thing. The 09 title run doesn't happen if they don't lose that. They go and win the national championship. 09 doesn't happen. Everybody leaves. Plain and simple. They are all gone. They came back for one reason. But
this year was fun for me for a lot of different reasons before the loss.
You're talking about 07, 08,
yes.
Correct? Yes.
That was the first year following them from the time they tipped off to the time the season ended.
Yeah, we were too young before that to really understand the college basketball mindset of, we love this so much that we have to, blow off friends and schoolwork.
Yeah. I remember entering the Final Four And if we think back, that was the first time all 4 number 1 seeds were in the Final Four.
That was a phenomenal Final Four that was ruined by us not winning. That was a very good Final Four, yes.
And I entered the Final Four not even thinking losing was an option, because we had literally killed everybody.
And on paper, we were so much better than that Kansas team.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what anybody says.
So, like, for us, it was the first year following the program, and then it's like, holy crap, we get the heartbreak. What turned me on to Carolina basketball, ironically, was the loss to Georgetown the year before, because when I watched us lose, it finally, okay, I actually care about this. Then we have this year, and it's, you look at the numbers, Tyler Hansbrough, 22 and 10. Wayne Ellington was giving you 17.
What a legend, man.
17 points a game. Lawson was giving you 12, and that was without a jump shot.
That assist number is kind of low, though, right? 5.2? I thought that'd be higher.
You know, and it's just
shocking.
They go 14 and 2 in the ACC. We're sweeping Duke. We're running NC State out of the building. Then Kansas happened.
Right.
But it was really a fun group.
Oh, definitely.
And then you look at the loss, and it's easily probably Roy Williams' best team that did cut down the nets.
I would say yes, because they got to the Final Four, and I mean, because 12 is so hard because, like, you just don't know because Kendall got injured so early in the tournament. Like 12, I think by that game against Kansas, we had all kind of realized, yeah, this is not happening. Because remember, in the game prior to that against Ohio,
they had to get overtime.
We kind of knew going into that Kansas game, this is not going to be pretty. Honestly, we played a lot better in that game than I thought. Going in, I had pretty much come to the conclusion, okay, we're losing tonight. We're not beating this team.
Well,
not without Kendall, not starting Stillman White, who at the time we were like, who the hell is this guy? Who is this?
As we transition to 12.
Right, let's talk about 12. I wanted to add 2 stats about the 07-08 team. Their scoring margin, plus 16.1. Their rebounding margin, plus 11. That's ridiculous.
That's gross.
That's awesome.
When you play in our conference.
Okay. Exactly. Went 14-2 in the ACC, by the way, at that time. Remember, Maryland's still in the conference. Of course, we hated Grievous Vasquez that season because he beat us in Maryland. Sickening. But, okay, let's move on to 2011-2012. 32-6, 14-2. This was the first team really since 09 that we're back, and we think this team can win a title. You look at, of course they lost in the Elite Eight to Kansas. We just talked about it. Wrist injury to Kendall Marshall against Creighton, who many people still absolutely hate. Is it strange that they're really not that high up on my list of hated teams? Because, I know people say that they injured him, but, he kind of just went in on a layup and
go
really
watch
awkward.
the play. There was nothing dirty. There was no foul play.
Right. I didn't see it.
It was the crappy side of sports that happened.
There you go.
And what's a Carolina tournament run without an injury? They go hand in hand.
To a point guard, nonetheless, as well, usually.
They go hand in hand.
Yep.
I remember entering that year, getting my college basketball previews, getting ready for the year, thinking this is the best team in college basketball and it's not close. You remember they lost to UNLV in Vegas. They went to Kentucky and got beat when John Henson's game-winning or game-tying shot got blocked.
We saw that. We actually watched that one together, and I went home with my dad and cried on the way home because we got beat.
You get into ACC play, that's the year we lose at home to Duke, where we blow a 10-point lead in 3 minutes or so.
Oh.
But then
that team only lost 6 games, though. It's shocking.
We go to Cameron. The last time, mind you, I've brought this up many a time in conversation, the last time that Duke and Carolina played the finals weekend of the regular season with first place on the line. We've gone now 7 years since that's happened. We go into Cameron Indoor Stadium, that game's over at halftime.
Yeah, remember that? That was the day that you were hanging out at my house, and after we won, my neighbor, actually, he's moving, by the way. He's actually moving now. So I have a guy that was a Duke fan that lived across from us for, 15 years or so. After this game is over, we go out and decide we're going to take a celebratory lap around the block, just screaming,